has been positioning itself in coalitions and new municipalities going forward. We're now joined live from our Durban studios by the party national chairperson, Joanne Downs. Joanne, thank you very much for joining us on SABC News. Now, you were instrumental in all ACDP coalitions. What was your most difficult experience in clinching a deal?
It actually wasn't that difficult, because I think the DA had come to the table knowing that it wasn't going to form a government without the smaller parties. And there were certain principles that we all agreed on, which was giving more services to the poor, accelerating service delivery, running honest government, being better at running each city. And we all came to the table, all the smaller parties came to the table with those same thoughts. So finding each other in terms of delivery wasn't difficult. What we did come to the table with, though, was our experience of the coalition in Cape Town. And so there were quite a few things that we adjusted. So, for example, we totally remain a separate political party. We have our own policies. We don't remove ourselves from those policies in any way. And in fact, written into the coalition agreement is that where there's a moral dilemma for us, we are able to differ with the governing coalition if we need to.
Joanne, I'd like us to take a step back a little bit and look at the contrast between your position now as a party and your pre-2011 position, where you had said that, you know, smaller parties tend to be swallowed up by larger ones in coalitions. Has that changed, and do you think this time around things are going to be different because it's the DA that's leading these coalitions?
Well, we hope it is. We hope that they've come to the table with a different thought than they had in Cape Town. And certainly the coalition partners are different people that we sat down with to the leaders in Cape Town. And I believe that we have to be careful of our own identity, and we have to fight for our space. And that's up to us. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're part of government. Each municipality has a political management committee. So every one of us has to agree on major policy changes before they can be taken even to council. So it's even before maybe MACO will set the things, but it won't go to a council meeting until the coalition partners agree on the way forward. So we do feel that we have a hand in it. We're very, very strong in our council in Tshwane. Councillor Derek Kissenduth was actually the CEO of a listed company, and he's taken up the mantle of safety and security in Tshwane, and I'm sure that he will carve a really good deal for the ACDP and for the people of Tshwane, because it's one of the areas that we feel very strongly about.
Now, you must have discussed the thorny issue of stronger supporters in voting like the EFF vote. What were those issues, if any?
Well, the EFF came with its own mandate, and they decided not to join the coalition. So effectively in Johannesburg and Tshwane, it's a minority council. So they can change their mind at any stage and put in a vote of no confidence. And so in some ways, it's actually a really good thing, these types of coalitions, because everybody's held accountable. Nobody's going to be able to do any kind of dodgy deal because there's just too many eyes involved and too many people watching. And I think the EFF will keep the DAs on its toes in terms of delivery to the poor, which is a good thing. And I think it's something that we have to manage. It's irresponsible to change government every 5 minutes, and I can't see the EFF being irresponsible in that manner. But I certainly think that they'll extract their pound of flesh when it comes to the budgets, and as any political party would.
Now, Joanne, what happens if these bigger parties renege from earlier agreements? Is there any recourse that the smaller parties have?
It's written into our coalition agreement that where we have a disagreement and where we feel that we've been crowded out or not being listened to, that we can take it further. It's part of that political management agreement. And so we have had issues in the past in one or two of our coalitions, and that side of things has worked well, where we've been able to put our case and the other party's been able to put their case, and we've managed the situations. So I think that's something that will work, and I think that local government is an excellent way to see how it works, to test how it works, because that's really service delivery at its nub. It's where people are closest to government, it's where people interface with government, and so it's excellent practice for the 2019 elections, which is what we're all looking at.
Now, earlier on, you mentioned your presence in the city of Cape Town, in the Western Cape specifically. You seem to have a strong support base there. Why is it? People
have been faithful in terms of their allegiance to the party in Cape Town. It's also a smaller area to manage. I mean, if you think of the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal even, it's vast. Those are vast rural areas, and it's quite difficult for a smaller party to reach all of those people. Whereas in a place like the Western Cape, it's much easier. And most people have access to internet and cell phones and those kinds of things where it's cheap to communicate. And I think our leaders in Cape Town have actually done an excellent job as well. They've performed very well as co-governors when we were in coalition, and they've performed even better as an opposition.
Now, let's look at your performance in this current local government election. Your support base and your performance dropped from the previous 2011 elections. Can you elaborate on that and perhaps reasons that you might think were behind the drop in performance?
Well, one of the things we raised very sharply with the DA was the anti-small party campaign. And I think that had a lot to do with our voters. Voting out of fear rather than out of policy, maybe. And I think the anti-small party campaign was quite successful in saying to people that a vote for a smaller party is a wasted vote. But I hope that it's been proved not to be so now, because after the election, of course, the DA needed all the smaller parties, and it definitely wasn't a wasted vote. And we have to work very hard to regain the people that once voted for us. I believe that we can do it, and I believe that this is the platform in which we can do that well.
Now, what about your previous assertions that joining other parties would somewhat undermine your Christian beliefs and policies as a party, especially looking at the parties that you've joined in this specific coalition and partnership to govern the municipalities that were hung?
Well, I think municipal coalitions are much easier because you're not dealing with the big thorny issues like abortion and those kinds of things, which we will never change our stance on. You're dealing with day-to-day issues like potholes and paving streets and making sure that everything's in order, making sure that people get housing and electricity and water and sewage. And those things, it's moral to provide those things for the poor. It's moral to provide those things for the taxpayer. So I don't think there's any disjuncture there at all. And as I said before, we have written into the coalition clauses whereby on specific issues we can opt out of a situation that we completely disagree with on Christian or moral grounds.
Now, you've just mentioned that the politics of municipalities are more easier to handle than national politics. And I think one of the coalition partners, UDM leader General Bantu Holomisa, mentioned that he would like to see a time where, local government becomes depoliticized. Do you think we can ever get to a point like that, considering that the main issue here is service delivery, and most parties have reiterated that?
I don't think it'll ever be depoliticized per se. It's parties that run for local government. I don't think it's ever going to be a majority of independents because people have faith in parties much more than they have in individuals. There have been some areas, of course, where independents have won, but not many places. And most of those independents that have won have been breakaways from another party. So I don't think it's ever going to be depoliticized, but what must be depoliticized is the bare fact of service delivery. And that's the issue that we have to deal with, and we have to deal with it well. We need to show the people of Tshwane, Johannesburg and Nelson Mandela Bay that this coalition government can deliver better, faster, more efficiently than it has been done before.
Joanne, now of all the municipalities where you're involved, where do you see big challenges of service delivery specifically?
I think it's going to be, it's quite hard to move a tanker. When you're steering a ship, it's quite hard to turn a tanker around. And so I think the initial first year, the reallocation of funding, I think is going to be difficult. And so that's something that may take a little bit of time, and I think that's where the biggest challenge is going to be reprioritizing. I think that there will be much less corruption in terms of tenders. I think there'll be much. In Tshwane, they are doing an investigation, for example, on smart parking meters. And the government in Tshwane, the municipality, paid way more money than it was worth. And I think with 5 parties being part of the coalition and the EFF also carrying a watching brief, it's going to be much more difficult to get away with issues like that. And we would certainly never partake in that kind of corruption. And I think that's going to make things easier for us. It's going to find more money and it's going to make things easier.
Now, something else that you mentioned was that this coalition partnership, for example, is almost or can be seen as practice for the 2019 elections. In your mind, are you thinking that, if this works out, if this local government coalitions work out, it will work out the same way in the 2019 national elections?
I think that's what we're all aiming for. And it's not that the ANC is a completely evil party and the DA is a completely good party, because both of them have issues and faults, both have good points and bad points. What has been the problem for the ANC has been its absolute majority. And I think that's hurt it as a movement and they do not have the moral high ground anymore. And so the more that we spread the power, the better the country will be run, in my opinion. So all of us need to push very hard towards coalition partnerships in the 2019 election. And that's going to depend on how well there's a huge number of voters that actually didn't turn out to vote. And I think if they turned, and I think most of those are ANC supporters, and it's those people that stayed away that we have to reach as parties to change the way that our country is run.
Now, something that was punted a lot during the elections, especially with the DA campaign, is job creation. I mean, we saw the newly elected mayor of the city of Johannesburg, for example, Herman Mashaba, saying that, he wants to create an environment where jobs can be created at local government level. Now, what are you as the ACDP bringing to the table to create jobs this time around? Do you have any input there? And another thing that I'd like to mention before you give me your answer is that, we had an economist speaking to us before the local government elections, during election week actually, who said that it's very difficult to create jobs at local government level. So your take on that with that point in mind?
I think it is difficult for any government to create jobs at any level. Government has to provide the milieu in which businesses can thrive. And for example, the amount of red tape that a small business has to go through to be registered even for VAT is absolutely ridiculous. We did a visit to India a few years ago, and they said they wanted to move factories here, but after a year of red tape, they gave up and went away and didn't bring their business here. And those are the things that you can do. Those are the things that we must do. And I think what we have to also do is create space for micro businesses. People who are doing entrepreneurial activities as it is. We should be helping those people, and I believe that local government has a role to play in training and into making opportunities available for those micro businesses, because those are the businesses that will save our economy in the long run. Those are businesses where people work at them every day and that's their bread and butter, and so they don't lose jobs in those businesses. So that's what the ACDP is bringing to the table. We really believe that we have to make place, training and money available to promote small business in a really big way. Of course, we've got to look for the big infrastructure spends as well. We've got to look for the big companies to come and invest in South Africa, and that's why we have to create those opportunities. And one of the best things that we can do is have the municipalities rated above junk status, have the municipalities rated with an AA, AAA plus for risk. And that can be done even within an area where maybe South Africa as a whole, as a nation, are rated just above junk status. I believe that that can happen at local government level because each one is rated on its own.
Now, Joanne, I guess a good way to wrap up our discussion would be for you to give us the way forward for the ACDP.
Well, the way forward for us is that, number one, we have to be much more visible. So thank you for this opportunity. It's part of our visibility that we need to have. So we have to be much more visible. We have to be much more active on the ground, and we have to be very vocal in looking to get our votes back that we lost in the previous election, and then to also gain more votes. And I believe that we can do that. Our message is starting to be heard. The idea of ACDP being part of government, we will have had governing experience by the time the 2019 elections come around. And I think people count that. They find it important. People have to think that you are able to govern if they're going to vote for you. And I think that's what we will be proving.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Jan.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.